Good morning. I'm a nerd. I've never tried to hide the fact, and frankly, I don't even think I can. On normal days, I geek out over Cicero's complex sentence structures, the actual potentials of a neuron, calculus theorems like Taylor series, or unique chord progressions in a piece of music. On bad days, I think to myself, I can't wait to do my homework because the material we learned in class today was just so interesting. Then on my worst days, I go to NORD, which stands for National Organization for Rare Diseases, and learn about all kinds of disorders, or look up random YouTube video lectures in my free time. Even my sister thinks I'm weird, as I grow exponentially excited to return to school, counting down the final days of break, eager to absorb new knowledge, immerse in refreshing ideas, and surround myself with my fellow nerds. Scientifically speaking, learning induces changes in the nervous system. During the critical period, which is a stage during brain development when a particular characteristic is believed to be most readily acquired, learning promotes the loss and growth of whole axon branches. These large-scale changes usually occur when we are younger, but different skills have different critical periods. Basic motor and sensory areas such as seeing, hearing, or touching develop first. Then come areas involved in language, ideas, and social relationships, and the areas that govern higher cognitive functions such as reading, mathematics, or critical thinking mature last. When adults learn, their brains still undergo these kinds of changes, but just on a smaller scale. Instead of creating entirely new means of communication between neurons, the act of learning fine-tunes the neurons that already exist by strengthening or weakening the synapses, or simply connections. Our brains are not hardwired, to say the least, but they actually have the ability to adapt to new environments by modifying the neuron's properties. This is called synaptic plasticity, an important quality that enables us to obtain and store new information. So learning, in a neurological sense, is just making novel connections between neurons. However, to me, learning is so much more than that. Michael Sandel, an American political philosopher, once said, and I quote, "It's ultimately the purpose of education to cultivate the love of learning for its own sake." Education has always been an integral part of my family, as both of my parents went to law school and my mom is a practicing lawyer. My sister and I faced high academic expectations ever since we were young, and I like to think that both of us rose to the challenge. But what should we make of the second part of the quote? What is cultivating the love of learning for its own sake? Well, being the avid learner and nerd that I am, I decided to learn about the love of learning. The love of learning is a character strength defined as the motivation to acquire new skills or build on existing knowledge. It helps people persist through challenges, setbacks, and negative feedbacks. They're curious, they're responsible, and they're resourceful. They may be scared of failure, but they know that it is beneficial to them in the long run. They recognize that learning doesn't have to be fun and enjoyable all the time, but they don't let a fleeting moment of frustration change how much they love learning. They are persistent in pursuing a deeper understanding of the subject and internalizing it, and they share with others the excitement on what they have learned. Based on the time I've spent here at Brooks, I think these characteristics capture a lot of the traits expressed, valued, and cherished by the Brooks community. And in fact, Brooks is filled with these kinds of people. I interact with fellow learners who learn for their own sake on a daily basis. So, physics. I still remember Mr. Hesse's opening line to our first physics class. I was a terrified freshman, had no idea what was going on, and just helplessly looked around the room in a desperate and unsuccessful effort to figure out what exactly I'd gotten myself into. Fast forward to senior year, and AP Physics has become one of my favorite classes, Mr. Hesse, one of my favorite teachers. Not only are the concepts very interesting because everything around us can basically be explained through physics and calculus, but also Mr. Hesse knows what we as students tend to struggle with, So he breaks down complicated concepts and makes them more tangible to us. He has limitless patience, and he has the answers to all of our questions, including the calculus parts, which he falsely claims he is very bad at. He also makes terrible but hilarious puns during his lectures, while keeping a stern expression. So I usually end up covering up my face with my hair, hoping he doesn't notice I'm about to burst out laughing in the middle of class. I love my Wednesday schedule because right after physics first period, I get to go to Latin class, taught by the one and only Mrs. Davies. This is my third year of having her as my Latin teacher, and she's a huge part of why I've grown to love Latin so much. Latin itself is a very cool language, as it almost seems like a puzzle we have to solve, figuring out which words are describing which, what the words are functioning as, and where the various clauses are. It's challenging because more often than we would like, there would be two whole lines between words that are supposed to go together, or there would be a random infinitive verb in the middle of a sentence, waiting for the 6 of us who are in that class to deduce what its function is. Once we figure out what the text means, Mrs. Davies brings in additional layers of information, such as cultural elements, diction, or figures of speech that help us understand the context, and therefore appreciate the Latin more. She's also very patient, tailoring her teaching to each student's learning method. And even outside of the classroom, she's just an amazing person to talk to in general. In my mind, she's become my mother away from home, someone whom I can always depend on for guidance, right alongside my advisor, Mrs. Keller. Both Mr. Hesse and Mrs. Davies, in their respective ways, fostered a genuine love of learning in me and inspired me to always strive for a more meaningful education. And based on that, I made new friends, became closer to old ones, had new experiences, and continued to expand my comfort zone. So, going back to what learning means to me, I've realized that it's about becoming a better version of myself than I was a second before. I believe that every one of us here are already learners that have at least one thing that make us geek out. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Maybe it's tennis, maybe it's the saxophone, maybe it's theater, European history, dancing, hockey. The possibilities are endless. Whatever your thing is, learn more about it for the sole reason of learning more about it. Watch a video, read an article, listen to a podcast, get excited about it. Then share that newly acquired knowledge with someone else and learn from them too, listening attentively to what they have to offer. If you're Jackie Desautel, learn what a meme is for the first time during trivia night. And if you're Shay Baker, share your love of memes with everyone around you. If you're Max Charlam, bring a box full of engineering gadgets to a college interview and explain how the different parts work to your interviewer. If you're Katie O'Brien, practice a new song and perform at Room X, blessing the audience with your angelic voice and heavenly talent. If you're Mr. Nam, teach your students how to code different programs and learn from the same students how to save your Snapchats. If you're Amelia Kovacs or Ashley Picard, row during the fall through a crew flex, then guide our new rowers through winter training. And if you're Olivia Jarvis, yell out during dinner that you are going to take someone to Pound Town and realize later that the phrase doesn't actually mean beating someone up. Make it your motto to learn something from every situation. And most importantly, learn for the sake of learning. Thank you. Please stay standing